Hey guys, and in preparation for the video I'm going to be releasing soon on using the iOS, on the Eureka framework to easily build forms in iOS, I thought I'd give some generic advice about when to roll your own things in programming and when to use a framework or a library as it's called. I'm going to talk about this in relation to iOS, but really this advice applies more generically to any type of framework you might want to use in any programming language. So when a framework is bits of pre-built code that you can just kind of has APIs that you can just kind of latch onto yourself, and when should you roll your own. So the first thing to say obviously is that sometimes you might have to use a framework or a library. For example, if you want to use features of the Mac operating system, user interface controls, you have to use the Cocoa framework. Or like if you're building for iOS, you have to use UIKit to use buttons and sliders and other user interaction features that are built into the system. What I'm really talking about here is when to use when you could conceivably easily roll your own or you use somebody else's. Technically, you could use all of the language features to rebuild all the system frameworks, but no one will really do that. So in this case, we're talking about third-party frameworks, and the first kind of peripheral thing to mention is that if you're going to be using third-party open source frameworks that you get from something like GitHub, you pretty much need to be using some sort of dependency management system. I don't care if that's called like Cocoa Pods or whatever they have on the Windows side, but you need to be using some kind of version control and obviously also some dependency management system. Really, if you're working on a big software project with more than one person, you should be doing that anyway, but it becomes even more important when you're using a third-party framework, because every time that a third-party framework updates, you need to be able to easily update your copy of it and make sure all the changes in the framework work with the version of your software, or if you need to change any code before you release a new version, you could conceivably just keep the same framework in that ships with your app, and lots of people do that. But if you want to be able to easily update your framework, you need not to just download the framework as a flat file, but have some kind of infrastructure where you can look at different versions and differences between the different versions. So with that out of the way, let's just assume you're using some dependency management system. What other things should you consider? Well, the first thing is kind of obvious how well supported it is by the community, how many forks there are of a certain repository. If we're talking about Git projects, or how long ago the last commit was, that'll tell you if it's an outdated project or not. You've got to be a little careful with that, because if the last commit is like a README file, but the last change to any code file is like 2 years ago, then it's probably not got tons of good maintenance. Another kind of linking on to that is how well you can understand the code. It's always a good idea to have at least some understanding of how all the code in your app works, including frameworks code. Even though it's only drop-in and use, you need to be able to use it. Because going on to my next point, if the code base suddenly stops being maintained, you could potentially become the maintainer of that code base and kind of revive the project and circumvent the problem that I talked about before. Related to that, we just have the general concept of extensibility. So you need to know that if you're relying on a framework heavily in a project, and then 4 months down the line you need to add some feature that isn't available in project, that you can add it yourself. And that goes to understanding the framework, and also the flexibility that the framework's built with to be able to allow you to add new features. Eureka, for example, allows you to add several different types of form fields, and the community has taken the core framework and added loads and loads of things onto it. Kind of off the back of that is the documentation. You need the developer documentation of the frameworks to be really, really clear, so that you can you can understand how to interact with the framework at a deeper level if you need to later. Moving on to the last thing I would say that it is still very important is how well it follows the language's idioms. Now, that means just the general way you write in the language, and it's the only thing you're really going to get a feel for once you've started building a language, what the philosophies are. For example, in Swift, we make heavy use for optionals rather than explicitly checking whether values are nil or not. And you'll only get a good feel for how well the framework follows the idioms as you get more familiar with a particular language. Relatedly, you may also want to consider if it's a port of another framework from another platform. It may not have very good support for the idioms, but if the other side of that is if it's a multi-platform thing and that one platform goes away, it'll be potentially easier to port your code over. So these are just some ideas about when it's a good time to adopt a framework versus or really how to choose a framework. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.